Romance was hard to attempt with 3 strong-willed girls in the house and a newborn. But Betsy and Matty tried to sneak time to themselves. Even if they had to steal a dance or two while taking out the trash, that is what they did. They were still very much in love and parented very well together. However, they wished they could get a day with just the 2 of them so they could keep their spark alive. For now, this was all they could manage. Adriana and Heidi became very close because of their mutual disdain for their sister. They also had a lot in common. They weren't just sisters anymore. They were best friends and did everything together. Holly's torment didn't affect them as much now that they had each other. Holly did not like not having control or power over her sisters anymore. She destroyed the dollhouse that their dad bought for them in a fit of anger. She didn't care that their father purchased the dollhouse with his hard-earned money. All she cared about was making Heidi and Adriana feel weak and inferior to her. Adriana caught Holly destroying their dollhouse and confronted her. Instead of fessing up and apologizing, Holly lashed out at Adriana and said hurtful things to her. One thing Holly did very well was not taking responsibility for her actions. She told her sister if she said anything to their parents, Holly would blame it on Adriana and she would get in trouble. Matty tried his best to keep their family connected, with the girls all being in school and their own activities. They rarely were able to have dinner on weeknights. Holly had dance, Adriana had robotics club, and Heidi had chess club. He made Sunday dinners a new tradition for their family. Both of the twins fought for the attention of their father. Holly talked about herself and little else while Heidi talked about the intricacies of cooking. She wanted to bond with Matty on a deeper level, so she read several books on cooking. This piqued Matty's interest and they chatted about cooking. Largely ignoring Holly, Matty even offered to teach Heidi how to cook. Holly interjected that she wanted to learn too, but everyone knew that this was untrue. Heidi watched closely as Matty prepared a turkey feast for the family to enjoy. She was very impressed by her dad's skilled technique. Matty called the family to dinner and was very excited to have all 3 girls at the dining table for once. Immediately after dinner started, Holly made fun of Holly for being a know-it-all. She told her that their dad only entertained this idea of teaching her to cook because she was annoying and wouldn't shut up about all of the useless knowledge she had in her brain. Heidi tried her best to stand up for herself. She was uncomfortable with conflict but knew that she couldn't allow her sister to get away with such mean comments. She told Holly that her lack of knowledge was what was embarrassing and called her the dullest nail in the toolbox. This enraged Holly, and the twins began to scream at each other from across the table. The family dinner was nearly ruined, and the 2 still could not pull it together. Matty tried to distract the girls so they could enjoy their meal together. He asked Holly about how her dance class was going. Holly jumped at the opportunity to talk about herself, so she shared every detail of her progress. She boasted that she was the best dancer in her class and all of the other girls were jealous of her. Heidi made snarky commentary under her breath for only Adriana to hear, and they quietly laughed about it together. When Heidi couldn't take any more of Holly's bragging, she excused herself from the table. After dinner, Betsy retreated to her bedroom to be with Max. Her girls were sometimes too much to handle and she preferred to be with little Max. He was a happy baby and did not yet have any issues with his siblings. It was a breath of fresh air after all the arguing between her children. Sometimes she wished she had had all boys because they wouldn't bicker like her twins did. After Betsy and Matty got ready for sleep, they sat on their bed to discuss the fiasco that was Sunday dinner. Betsy confided in her husband that she was worried about the arguments with the girls. They only got worse with age, and Holly's sharp tongue was causing too much chaos in their home. Matty listened intently to his wife's complaints. He had also noticed the growing divide between the girls. He knew that something had to be done about Holly's incessant bullying of their other daughters, but wasn't sure how to proceed. Matty suggested that they eventually sit Holly down and create ground rules for how she should treat her siblings. If they are a united front, maybe Holly would be more inclined to listen. Betsy suggested that they wait and see if her attitude gets any better, and then act if it doesn't. She didn't want to single Holly out and have the chaos get worse. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Matty repaired the dollhouse that was broken. Adriana took blame for the toe being broken, but deep down Matty knew that it had been Holly who destroyed it. He didn't know how to get her to behave. On top of being a great student, Adriana excelled in art class. Her teacher gave her additional art projects to work on at home and proudly displayed her art for her peers to see. Her paintings brought her great pride and hoped she would one day be good enough to make this her career. Heidi's least favorite part of the day was bedtime. She shared a room with the twin sister that despised her, and she was trapped and defenseless against her verbal attacks. She didn't know why Holly hated her so much, but didn't want to share a room with her anymore. If Holly didn't want to be her friend, that was fine. Heidi did not care to have her sister's approval anymore. She just wanted her to leave her alone. After Holly was finished breaking Heidi's confidence for the night, they went to sleep. Everything had to be on Holly's terms, even sleep. Maxwell aged into an infant. He was a wiggly baby, but always had a smile on his face. He was the sunshine that Betsy and Matty needed in their household. Betsy loved the weekdays when it was just she and Max at home. They had their little routine which Betsy adored. Max's favorite activity was bath time. He loved to splash around in the water and get clean. It made Betsy so happy to see Max discover new things and grow into his quirky personality. She worked diligently with Max every day on tummy time. It was not his favorite thing to do, but he was still a determined little boy just like his father. He never shied away from a challenge and tried until he reached his milestones. Even bedtime was easy with Max. He was such a calm baby and rarely threw fits. Adriana continued to be a big help to her parents even after Maxwell aged into an infant. It was the least she could do to make their lives easier. Matty always greeted his wife first when he returned home from work. He spent ample time with his little boy after getting home to give his wife a break. He also worked on helping Max achieve his milestones. He loved watching the look of concentration etch on the little boy's face as he tried to complete a task. His bond was growing stronger with his son every day. Betsy loved watching Matty be a father to their son. She knew that he loved their girls that loved to finally have a son. Her heart swelled when she watched Matty dote on their little Maxwell. It made her want to have many more children with him. They were a good parenting unit together. Matty didn't like to show weakness, but in truth, he was exhausted and stretched very thin. When Betsy took Max upstairs for bed, Matty couldn't even keep his eyes open any longer. He took many naps on the couch when he was alone downstairs. Even a short nap helped him persevere. Even after his short nap, he still had work to do before going to bed for the night. He switched the laundry from the washer to the dryer so Adriana didn't have to. He added the girls' ever-growing extracurricular activities to the calendar so they would never forget something. Holly and Adriana were as thick as thieves. They did everything together, aside from share a room. They kept each other on task with their homework, but also encouraged each other to act like kids. They enjoyed to swing on the swing set in their yard and gossip about the drama happening at school. They weren't considered popular by any means, but at least they had each other. Heidi climbed the jungle bars as a personal challenge. She wasn't the strongest, but she liked to push herself. She always wanted to be better. Holly asked her parents if she could invite a classmate over for a play date. His name was Michael Good, and he practically worshipped her. She didn't tell her parents this, but she had a plan for getting her grades up. Michael was both smart and popular, and since he had a crush on her, she could convince him to do her homework for her. Her parents agreed to allow Michael to come over as long as one of them was in the room. Holly greeted Michael and told him how happy she was that he was able to come over to her house. It was no secret around school. Michael Good was utterly in love with Holly Barton from the first moment he saw her come into class late. He wanted her to be his first girlfriend. Holly thought Michael was sweet enough, but she felt indifferent towards him. She had a mission to get better grades than her sisters, and Michael was the key to achieving that. Maxwell was exceeding his milestones for his age group. Betsy was so proud of her son. She felt like she had a much more hands-on role in Max's early development than she did with the twins. She wondered if that was why Holly was the way she was. She hoped to shield Max from any of Holly's bad energy. Adriana and Holly worked on their homework every night after school. Heidi had become on board with embarrassing Holly. Adriana was more hesitant. She was a docile child and simply wanted to keep the peace. Matty decided that in order to maintain his active role in his kids' lives, he would step back from his role as a chef, but continue to be the manager of the diner. It was the only way for him to have balance. Holly enacted her plan to trick Michael to do her homework for her. One day after he came home with her after school, she told him that she had a crush on him. She gushed about how amazing he was and asked if he wanted to be boyfriend and girlfriend. Michael was shocked that the most popular girl in school liked him back, and he agreed. Their young budding relationship was playful and warm, but that was only to butter Michael up. She felt like she should receive an Oscar for how easily she was able to get Michael under her control. That very day, Holly claimed that she had a headache and needed to lay down, but she couldn't because she had homework due the next day. Michael insisted that Holly rest and he would complete the assignments for her. Just like that, Holly's plan was working seamlessly. Slowly, Holly convinced the board to complete her chores for her. Michael wanted Holly to be happy, and so he did everything she asked without a second thought. Adriana and Heidi noticed Holly taking advantage of Michael between random games they would play together. They felt like detectives because they innocuously played their games while spying on their sister. What she was doing to that poor boy was not right, and they would find a way to expose her. Michael had already finished his project for science class, so Holly batted her eyelashes and convinced him to also do hers. It didn't take much convincing for Michael to agree. Holly kept him company as she watched TV. He tried to get her to contribute some to the project, but she skillfully talked her way out of it. She didn't want to waste her time on a silly assignment. She complimented him and told him she loved him to keep him right where she wanted him. Her grades were improving significantly, and her parents praised her for finally completing her chores. Michael was the key to getting all of the positive attention she so desperately desired. Holly did enjoy Michael's company. All she ever wanted was to have constant attention and validation, and she had that with Michael. He wasn't the cutest boy in school, but he was obedient and sweet to her. Maybe that was what love was. After several months of Holly using Michael for homework help and chores, Betsy sat her daughter down. She reprimanded her for using such a nice boy for personal gain. She called her daughter selfish and cold. She told Holly that her sisters were worried about her, and that was why they told Betsy what she was doing. Holly knew that this wasn't out of the goodness of her sisters' hearts, and she would make them pay for tattling on her. The next time Holly saw Adriana, she got in her face and said she would hurt her if she didn't stay out of her business. She went a step further and promised to destroy all of Adriana's paintings if she didn't stop. Adriana told Heidi what had happened between her and Holly the moment Heidi got home. Heidi was shocked that Holly became so aggressive with her. Holly's tirade had to be stopped. Heidi eagerly brainstormed a plan to destroy their sister. If their parents were not going to do anything to stop Holly, they needed to take matters into their own hands. Holly specifically said that Adriana needed to stay out of her business. She said nothing about Heidi. Adriana was scared of losing her paintings and cried because she didn't want to rock the boat. Heidi knew that this was her moment to finally humble Holly. As winter was coming to an end, Holly invited Michael over to build a snowman together. Over the last few weeks, Holly's indifference towards Michael had turned into a full-blown crush. She actually liked spending time with him and was asking him to do things for her less and less. She still wanted to do well in school and not do chores, but she liked her relationship with Michael more. She was conflicted by her own feelings because having a crush on Michael left her vulnerable and out of control. She hated to not have control. She tried to tread this new revelation carefully. Michael was sweet to her and showered her with compliments every time he saw her. He thought she was the most beautiful girl in the world. Holly didn't know how to treat a boy that she liked, so she playfully teased him and shoved him in a cutesy way. Michael did not like this, and suddenly Holly felt clueless and at a loss for how to continue for the first time ever. Michael eased her insecurities by giving her a hug and telling her that she didn't need to be hateful for people to respect her. Holly and Michael laid on the ground and made snow angels together. They watched the stars and finally felt content with both herself and her life. Their relationship may have started out as a one-sided manipulation scheme, but it was so much more than that now. Betsy helped Maxwell explore new foods. Max was one of a kind. Most infants were picky with their food, but not Max. He enjoyed trying new foods and making funny faces at his mum. This quickly became Betsy's favorite thing to do with her son. He amazed her every day. As Max was getting older, Betsy realized that she didn't want Max to be her last child. Their home still had space for more babies, and they had more than enough love to give. She brought this idea up to Matty, and he was in agreement with trying for another baby. He danced her around the kitchen because he was so excited at the prospect of having another little one waddling around the house. They agreed to try right away so their children wouldn't be too far apart in age. Once their girls were at school and Max was down for his nap, Betsy and Matty snuck upstairs to begin trying for their last baby. Having the time to be with each other in this way was always an exciting time, but it was even more special because they were trying to expand their family. At the start of spring, Heidi finally decided to enact her plan to destroy her sister. She sat Michael down while Holly was at dance class and told him Holly's plan to use him. At first, Michael did not believe Heidi, but the more evidence she told him, the more convinced he was. He was devastated to find out the type of person that Holly truly was. Heidi had been his savior, and he didn't know how to ever repay her. The two spent the day together to wait for Holly to get home. Even though Michael was always at the Barton residence, he had not gotten to know the other two sisters. Heidi was witty and nothing like he had heard Holly speak about her. He quickly realized that maybe he picked the wrong twin to have a crush on. Holly had the looks. There was no denying that. But Heidi had everything else. He wanted to be her friend. Heidi agreed to be friends. Not only would being his friend enrage her twin, she also really enjoyed his company. They had a lot in common. Holly came home to the sight of her boyfriend and nasty sisters swinging and laughing together. Holly was enraged and threw a tantrum. She yelled at Michael to stop hanging out with her sister and told Heidi to go away. Heidi got off of the swings with a smug look on her face. Holly took her sister's place on the swings, and Michael told Holly that their relationship was over. He thought she was a nasty person and used him for her own personal gain. At first, Holly was devastated that Michael didn't want to be her boyfriend anymore. She had become very fond of him and enjoys spending time with him. Quickly, she turned off her emotions and lashed out. She told Michael that he wasn't cute enough for her anyway, and he deserved her sister because they were both ugly. She told him that she was going to break up with him anyway. Holly's anger turned towards her twin sister. If it weren't for Heidi, she would still have Michael. This was all her fault. They began to tussle. All of the years of disdain and jealousy came to fruition in the backyard of the Barton residence. They fought until the both of them tired out. Both walked away with bruises and cuts. Holly proclaimed to be the winner of the fight, but it was a stalemate. Betsy and Matty sat their girls down to discuss the fight and their collective bad behavior the last few months. After laying it all out on the table, it became apparent that Holly was the root of all the issues going on in their home. They asked Heidi and Adriana to leave the table so they could speak to Holly alone. Holly tried to sweet-talk her way out of a punishment, but Betsy was not having it. She raised her voice at Holly and told her that she needed to start behaving. She tried being patient with her daughter, but enough was enough. Holly screamed at her parents. She called them terrible and negligent. She had so desperately wanted their love and affection, but they would only give it to Heidi and Adriana. She called their rules unfair and biased towards her sisters. She thought she was always set up to fail. She yelled that she felt trapped in her room with a sister that was always better than her everything. She told her mum how unfair it was to keep her in that room when Heidi and Adriana clearly got along better. She promised to behave herself as long as she was given her own space. When Betsy initially declined Holly's conditions, Holly lashed out at her mother even more. She told her mother that she hated her and wished that her father would have taken her away from she and her twin. She would be better off without Betsy and Matty and the siblings she did not love or care for. Betsy finally caved and allowed Holly to take Adriana's room because she could not stand to hear more of the hurtful words coming from her daughter's mouth. Betsy and Holly's relationship dynamic turned into a difficult one. Betsy was deeply hurt by the things that Holly said, especially that Holly didn't love her. Holly sat on the bed of her new room. She was angry that her sisters had taken Michael away from her, but she ultimately won. She was given the large room to live in by herself. She didn't have to be around her dreadful sister anymore. Adriana and Heidi moved Adriana's easel and painting supplies into their new room together. Adriana and Heidi felt on top of the world. They had defeated their sister. She no longer had Michael to do her homework and chores for her. More importantly, they finally got to share a room together. They were both sisters and best friends, so this was the best-case scenario. Heidi would no longer be belittled and insulted every night before bed. She would be able to have an endless sleepover with the person she was closest to in the world. They would be able to gossip and do homework together and whisper about secrets long after they were supposed to be asleep. Heidi was finally happy. That night, Betsy and Matthias argued about how each of them went about the situation with Holly. Betsy was angry that Matty got up and left halfway through the conversation with Holly when they were supposed to be a united front. Matty was annoyed that his wife relented so easily to Holly's verbal attack. Because she did this, Holly was given exactly what she wanted and would ultimately learn nothing. He argued that by backing down, Betsy has taught her that all she needs to do to get her way is to say hurtful things. Eventually, Matty apologized to his wife for raising his voice and leaving her at the table with Holly. He heard all of the awful things that Holly said and knew that they were in for a rough several rupees. They had to find a way to get through to Holly that her actions and words have consequences. Betsy suggested that they brainstorm ideas at a later time. Holly was satisfied with her new room, so she would behave for the time being. They would eventually find a way to bond with their daughter again. They had to. A few weeks after the big fight between Heidi and Holly, Michael stopped by the Barton home to give Heidi a thank you gift for being his saving grace with Holly. He gave her his childhood teddy bear. It was a small gesture, but it warmed Heidi's heart. She invited Michael to play with her that afternoon. Heidi began to feel more than platonic feelings towards Michael. He was unlike anyone she had ever met before, and she loved being around him and appreciated his never-ending positivity. Heidi and Adriana's duo became a trio with Michael. They all enjoyed the same things and had similar outlooks on life. Michael was a welcome addition to their friendship. As the weather got warmer, they had speed competitions in the swimming pool. Betsy spent extra time with her little boy. His birthday was quickly approaching, and she wanted to remember her little man at this age. He was so delightful as an infant and couldn't wait to see how he would be as a toddler. Betsy worked with him on trying to walk so that he was ahead of the game before aging into a toddler. He took to walking easily, just like everything else he did. Matthias diligently baked his baby boy cake for his birthday. He couldn't believe that his Maxwell was about to age into a toddler. It was such a bittersweet moment and solidified his want for just one more child. He didn't want this to be the last major birthday of a little one they would celebrate. Mattie added the candles to the cake and wished for Max to be a rambunctious tot so he would roughhouse with him. Betsy held her sweet Maxwell as he blew out his candles. Max wished to spend even more time with his mummy and daddy. Maxwell's toddler trait is that he is silly. Matthias also aged into an adult. He was 4 years older than his wife. Mattie wished for more love and peace in his household for this next stage of life. Max was just as Mattie wished him to be. He was rambunctious and ornery. He got into everything around the house and kept his parents on their toes. Holly liked to hob the TV simply because she didn't want her sisters to have any leisure time. Adriana didn't mind though. She preferred to keep her mind sharp through reading, not allowing her mind to rot with television. She kept up with all the latest non-fiction books. Heidi decided that she no longer cared about Holly's opinion of her and refused to do things just to appease her. She invited Michael over to spend time with her, as Heidi figured it would. Holly was angry that Heidi had the audacity to bring Michael around her. Holly went into a fit of rage. She screamed at her sister that it was so disrespectful to bring the boy that she once dated over to their house where she would have to watch Heidi and Michael growing closer. She demanded that he leave immediately. When Heidi refused, Holly shouted even louder at her twin. Heidi continued to stand her ground. She would not be pushed around by Holly anymore. Holly stared at Heidi for a long moment before initiating yet another physical fight. Holly had become unhinged with anger towards her sister. Heidi did not back down or cower at her sister. Instead, she fought back with all she had. She was admittedly less strong than Holly because she was not a dancer like her twin, but she held her own. Adriana and Michael watched with odd amusement as the twins continued to fight. Adriana was proud of Heidi for giving Holly a taste of her own medicine. She wished she had the courage to do what Heidi did. After months of trying for another baby, Betsy finally started to experience the now all too familiar pains of morning sickness. Betsy tried to relax by taking a dip in the pool, as she could not contain her excitement at the possibility of another little one. She would take a pregnancy test as soon as she missed her next period. She would also tell her husband after Adriana's birthday party. Betsy cooked Adriana her mother's special birthday cake recipe. She wanted her to also have the joys of the Barton family tradition since she was every bit her daughter as Holly and Heidi were. She had known her almost all her life, and now she was about to age into a teenager. Her girls would soon follow. Betsy put the candles on Adriana's cake and wished to the girl to be more assertive as she aged into her next phase of life. Mattie gave his oldest child a tight hug before she aged into a teenager. He couldn't believe that his once little girl was transforming into a young woman right before his eyes. Adriana blew out the candles on her cake. She wished for boys to notice her, She was always considered the lanky, weird, smart girl at school, but she didn't want to be there anymore. It was hard for her to even have this thought, but she secretly wished she could be more like Holly in that respect. Beau's fun after her. Adriana's teenager trait is that she's chic. This means that she builds friendships and relationships slightly faster. Adriana's teenager aspiration is to be an academic.